So I guess there were quite a few things that were kind of getting in the way, thinking about kind of trauma and things that I'd been through in my life. Kind of just, being able to access services for the first time was really difficult.
Nikki's being difficult and she doesn't engage. We can't get the assessment done because she's not engaging. This repeated pattern of somebody, the person or the presentation being the problem, as opposed to thinking about what the underlying problem is. Yeah. I think we very much expected that somebody engaged because it was offered to them. It was an expectation. It makes me feel really, really sad and sorry that was your experience.
There was quite a lot of pressure to just open up about things that had happened and disclose about trauma or kind of those really significant things that I'd been through in my life and kind of how they were impacting on me. And actually, I just found that really difficult. Yeah. Having met people for the first time and kind of being expected to just be able to share things just wasn't working for me. And I think because of that, I ended up being labelled as someone that didn't want to engage, or I didn't want to help myself. Sharing in general can be really difficult. I think particularly if you've not got relationships, kind of existing relationships as well, that kind of adds to that difficulty. I know kind of certainly for me, being expected to share or to know what I wanted or to ask for the help that I thought I needed kind of early on was just so difficult. I'm Nikki, and I'm someone with lived and living experience of mental ill health, and I have a lot of experience of accessing care for my mental health difficulties from a variety of services, including those at Humber. And I work now in a lived experience leadership role where I'm able to use some of my lived experience to make a difference to services and to support others to share their lived experience as well, to work on service improvement. So I'm here today with Rachel, and we're going to have a chat about trauma-informed care and both of our journeys with that.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I've worked for Humber for over 20 years as a nurse. I've worked trust-wide and always worked with people who have experienced complex trauma. I currently work as an advanced practitioner in the complex emotional needs service, which is underpinned by trauma-informed principles. So Nikki and I have worked together recently as colleagues. We met when Nikki came on board with some training that I'm involved in. Nikki came on board as an expert by experience. I work as an expert by occupation. And I guess, we'll talk about it as we go along, but it's a trauma-informed package of care that we're both delivering together. We did not know each other when you was accessing services for support, did we, Nikki?
No.
Just to be clear on that. And I guess we will be highlighting how both of our journeys have evolved, and that's enabled us to become colleagues like we are today.
Yeah, sounds good.
Brilliant. I wonder if it would help if you explained a little bit about how you came into contact with our services.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, my mental health is something that I've struggled with for most of my life, really. Certainly if I kind of think back as far as I can remember, my mental health was something that I struggled with. And I guess I didn't feel very confident seeking any support for that early on. So whilst I was living at home, it just didn't really feel like an option for me. So the first time I kind of reached out for support was when I moved away to university when I was 18. But really kind of found it incredibly difficult, I think, particularly seeking support from NHS-based services. And I think a lot of that was around being really worried, I guess, about things being documented about me, obviously in things like medical notes, and just worried about that following me, I suppose. Okay. So for me, a lot of the support that I received really early on was from private providers. So kind of through my university counselling service, and then later through some private counselling. I did have a little bit of kind of NHS and primary care contact, but found it quite difficult to engage with, really. And I wasn't really ever sure that the support I was getting really met my needs, because I was finding it difficult to, I guess, explain what they were. Again, a little bit of kind of secondary care and crisis contact, but I just found it so difficult to engage with that early on. And then I moved up to this area in 2017 for a job, and it was a couple of years later when I first sought support from Humber services. Again, I guess early on found that very challenging to engage with, to know kind of what I needed, I suppose. But more recently, I found kind of the support that I've had really helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And how did trauma experiences impact any of those aspects of you accessing services?
Yeah, I mean, I think particularly early on had a big impact for me. So as somebody that has been through some quite difficult things in my life and kind of early experiences of trauma, I found it really difficult just generally being open and honest about things that had happened, particularly with professionals that I was coming across that I didn't know well at all. I think that expectation of just opening up to someone you've just met is going to be intimidating for a lot of people, and I certainly found that really challenging. I think I kind of let emotions get in the way quite a lot as well. So thinking about things like shame about experiences that had happened to me, and worrying about what sort of reaction I'd get from people that I was sharing that with. I think particularly feared things like being judged or misunderstood. And I guess that was kind of complicated by viewing people as quite unsafe. So again, thinking about things that had happened to me, people in general weren't people to be trusted. I found trust quite difficult, and building trusting relationships was really hard for me. And I think I'd had a previous experience of being disbelieved when I tried to share something with someone. So again, just really worrying that would play out in other interactions. And I guess as well, for me, kind of early on in seeking support, I found it really hard to accept some of the things that happened to me as well. And that made it really difficult, because I almost felt that by talking about things and kind of being able to open up about them, I was going to have to confront things that had happened. And honestly, that just felt really quite scary.
Yeah.
So I guess there were quite a few things that were kind of getting in the way, thinking about kind of trauma and things that I'd been through in my life, kind of just, being able to access services for the first time was really difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's really making me think about my experience as a member of staff.
Yeah.
And I guess years ago, I'm probably going back further than when you accessed services. There was, so the two things come to mind for me. So the first one is we always focus on what was in front of us. So the way somebody was presenting. Yeah. So I guess in your case, like not engaging. So the person's not engaging would be what we would focus on. We wouldn't focus on so much why that would be. And there was often a lot of, I guess, kind of like buzzwords associated to how somebody presented. So one being behavioural.
Yeah.
And the things that we saw was, I guess, what we treated, and we never looked at what was underlying. Yeah. So it's really helpful for you to hear you experiencing things such as shame, and the reasons why you may not feel comfortable talking. Whereas I guess my side of things years ago was very much like Nikki's being difficult and she doesn't engage. We can't get the assessment done because she's not engaging. This repeated pattern of somebody, the person or the presentation being the problem, as opposed to thinking about what the underlying problem is. I think we very much expected that somebody engaged because it was offered to them. It was an expectation. Thinking about it makes me feel really, really sad and sorry that was your experience. And I certainly have been around for a lot of years and being part of seeing the not engaging as an issue as opposed to what's going on underneath.
I guess that very much kind of resonates with some of my early experiences of trying to seek support. And it's really interesting because I think I did end up being labelled as somebody that was not wanting to engage or kind of difficult or challenging. And actually that was really quite hurtful because that wasn't kind of my perception of what I was trying to convey. I think I found it very difficult, but I think professionals that I was working with didn't understand that. And I think, as you say, there's that expectation that I should be engaging because they were offering something.
Yeah.
So I guess if I kind of think of like a couple of examples. So I know kind of early on coming into secondary care services in particular, or crisis support, there was quite a lot of pressure to just open up about things that had happened and disclose about trauma or kind of those really significant things that I'd been through in my life and kind of how they were impacting on me. And actually, I just found that really difficult. Having met people for the first time and kind of being expected to just be able to share things just wasn't working for me. And I think because of that, I ended up being labelled as someone that didn't want to engage, or I didn't want to help myself. Kind of think of an example of, finding it quite difficult to open up and just being told that, well, I was risking being assessed under the Mental Health Act, for example, because they couldn't possibly risk assess me if I was finding it difficult to share. And I think some of those reactions that I had, which were very much kind of shutting down emotionally or feeling quite dissociated, I had a tendency to just kind of say things like, I don't know, because I was really overwhelmed and couldn't put my thoughts or experiences into words. And actually being met with, well, we're going to look at sectioning you because how do we know how risky you are if you're not able to talk to us, rather than that understanding of actually it's really difficult to share about trauma.
Yeah. It's making me think about some of the restrictive practice. So you've been a patient on wards, haven't you? Yeah. So I'm thinking of like kitchen access, which wasn't always a given. It was something that people were assessed for, certainly on some of the wards that I worked on years ago. And it wouldn't be unusual for somebody to have no access to the kitchen, and that would continue because they're not engaging in the assessment. And there was this phrase of patients like remaining high risk. So it wouldn't be unusual to see in somebody's notes, no kitchen access granted, remains high risk, when actually we've got no information from the person and we haven't considered, once again, as we were just saying, what was going on underneath. And certainly in terms of detained patients, it would prolong admissions. The admissions would go on and on and on, I guess unnecessarily, because we weren't creative in the way that we thought about why somebody presented the way they did, such as this person can't engage for some of the reasons that you've said.
It's really sad to hear, isn't it, that there's that expectation on people to kind of share about really difficult things, or they'll be restricted over really basic things like being able to access a kitchen. I know kind of from some of my experiences of accessing inpatient care kind of more recently, it's difficult, isn't it? I think we were having a conversation about having to ask for things, weren't we? And how difficult that can be.
I was working on a ward at the time. I'm trying to think how long ago it was. Probably 8 to 10 years ago. And it was of a time where, so that there has historically been a culture of nurses, or the nursing team sit in the office and the patients kind of like mill around the ward. And I did see a shift in that, to be fair. And I'm not sure what it's like now. I haven't worked on wards for years. However, there would be times where you had to be in the office because you had office-based tasks to do. And there was an expectation, once again, that if a patient needed something, they'd come and knock on the door, which, that might be okay. There's scenarios where it probably wasn't okay, and there's scenarios where it absolutely was okay. It was the only way it could be done. However, I think what we missed was how difficult that was for some people. And I remember somebody basically saying, in essence, I have to ask permission to go in the shower. And what he was describing to me was, I have to pluck up the most I have to pluck up courage beyond belief just to leave my bedroom, let alone walk through a really, really busy ward, to then knock on the door, to then sometimes be told you'll have to wait because we're doing something, to then have to wait to receive a towel just so I can have a shower. And I'd not really thought about it, in all honesty. Like, as much as I would try my best to minimise a patient's journey, whatever stage that was, minimise them feeling uncomfortable and, trying to make them as comfortable as possible. I never thought about it like that. Just people come and knock on the door and that's the way it is. And actually it's not the way it is. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah. I think there's such a lot of, or I think sometimes professionals assume that asking for things is easy. And actually, I think in my experience, sometimes it's really not.
Yeah.
I think sharing in general can be really difficult. I think particularly if you've not got relationships, kind of existing relationships as well, that kind of adds to that difficulty. I know kind of certainly for me, being expected to share or to know what I wanted or to ask for the help that I thought I needed kind of early on was just so difficult. And I don't really ever feel that I was met with an understanding of how difficult that was for me. I think that ties back into kind of what we were saying about it. Some professionals in kind of my experience have just been really quick to label me as not engaging without necessarily thinking, actually, for Nikki, sharing at this point is really difficult and giving me that time. And I think, it's difficult. And I think it's easy to just assume that it's simple for somebody to know what they want and be able to ask for it. And actually for some people it's not, is it?
No, not at all. I totally agree. And I really see it now. And I guess, it's making me really think about how things can evolve or escalate depending on what way we look at it. Because actually, if that was somebody who wasn't engaging because they simply can't because of their experiences, and then was somebody who didn't have the courage to leave the bedroom and ask for the towel, before you know it, they're not only not engaging, but they're not attending to the personal hygiene. It just evolves, doesn't it? And that didn't happen in that scenario, but it's really making me think about that one thing could really grow into something else as well. Did that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's comes back to kind of relationships and getting to know people as being really important, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think for me, if I think about kind of my own experiences, obviously I've kind of shared some of those difficulties early on in feeling understood by people. And I think particularly, or being given the opportunity to be understood, because I think I felt a lot of pressure to disclose things before I felt ready. And that was very difficult. And it ended up with me kind of shutting down. I had an experience where a professional basically wrote in my notes that they didn't believe that I'd been through anything significant because I didn't want to share with them. And I think the kind of turning point for me was meeting someone that did want to build a relationship with me and gave me the time. So back in kind of going back a few years now, I'd had a hospital admission, and just prior to that, I'd met my care coordinator for the first time. And after I came out of hospital, she kind of just sat down with me. We had a really open and honest conversation, and she was kind of very aware of how I'd been referred to in kind of notes and things prior to that. And what she kind of said to me was it didn't matter. Actually, she was just going to form her own opinion through getting to know me. It didn't matter that somebody had written that I was difficult or challenging, that I didn't want help. She was just going to form her own opinion on that. And I think she was also really clear about giving me the time to build that relationship with her. And I think she knew that was something important and not something I'd been offered previously. And she just said to me, takes as long as it takes. And it really did take a while. It certainly wasn't kind of a quick process. But I think for me, knowing that I was working with someone that wanted to give me that time, who wanted to form a relationship, who didn't just expect me to share things instantly, and who was being very honest about the fact that she wouldn't have formed any judgments about me based on what was in my notes already, made such a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we worked together for several years in the end and did build a really good relationship. And for me, that relationship with her then unlocked me feeling able to start to build relationships with other people. And I think I wouldn't be where I am now without that, because it enabled me to access different kinds of therapy and build other trusting relationships and get to a point where I was able to share.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to hear that.
Yeah.
I guess this is kind of like making me think about my current work, but also going back because relationships has always been a big thing for me. And I've always held that as something that's really important and an intervention on its own, so to speak. But I guess going back to ward days once again, because most of my career has been on wards, we spent, we did 12-hour shifts, 4 days a week, and spent what felt like a lot of time with people. But actually, when I really think about it, the day was structured. It was quite task focused, as it had to be, and probably still does need to be. It was, I guess, ward-based activity led. And if I really think about the time I spent with the people, it was fairly superficial.
Because I guess you think like spending that much time together, you get to know people really well, but I guess it doesn't always happen like that.
No. And then once again, focusing on what the person does as opposed to what's going on for them. It's just so different to the role I'm in now, where I have the time and, the creativity and the flexibility to develop relationships in a way that works for the person, because of how crucial it is. Like you say,
I guess I've had some experience because although I've accessed care, I suppose, from a team that sits kind of under the bigger umbrella, isn't it, of the service that you work in. So they obviously work in that kind of really similar way with that focus on relationships and really embedding kind of trauma-informed approaches. And I think for me, what you said about kind of creativity was something that's been really beneficial for me. I think if you think about sitting face-to-face with somebody in like a NHS bland clinic room, that can feel really different, can't it? It can feel quite uncomfortable for some people. I know I've experienced that in the past, just kind of sitting opposite somebody, staring at them and feeling quite pressured to open up and to share difficult things. And I think therapy that I've had kind of more recently, where there's been more creativity around that. So going out for a walk with somebody, doing an activity together that takes a bit of that pressure off, I think can make a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's kind of, like you say, sitting in the NHS bland therapy space, it fits with we've expected people to engage because we've offered it. It's like, this is the room and this is where we do the work, and that's kind of it. And I'm going back to when I worked like that. I'm not sure if it was ever an option that we thought about changing it because it didn't suit the person. We will have done if there'd been like really key features to it. But it was kind of a given that that's where we have our sessions. Whereas in the role I'm in now, I can be so creative. I've been on the swings in local parks whilst it's been snowing before today.
Sounds great.
It was great because it wasn't snowing when we arrived, and whilst we were mid-swinging, it started snowing, and it was quite magical. But right through to, like you say, like walking, going for a drive, which seems really basic, and actually is fairly basic. But when you think about it, that not having somebody sat opposite you expecting, or you feeling like you have to give eye contact. So just by sitting in the car side by side and going for a drive,
makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, going back to like, I approach my work really curiously now. I tend to have a bit of a not knowing kind of stance. I'm not one for scrutinising the notes. I do file reviews, or one of my colleagues sometimes does file reviews with me, but I tend to not look at those till I'm well into an assessment with somebody or well into a getting to know process with somebody. And by building the relationship and considering things like if we're sat side by side in the car and we're not staring at each other, it might make them feel more comfortable. Or if we tap into some hobbies or interests, once again, they might feel more comfortable. And actually the amount of information that I receive from being with them, observing what's happening, using our own interactions, our own relationships, as well as what they start to tell me when they get to know me and trust me. It's phenomenal. Like you don't need the notes, you know, in some way.
Yeah. And I can imagine if you did go back and look at the notes, what you'd see is lots of kind of assumptions and judgments probably.
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to, I mean, going back to judgment, actually, to be fair, we was talking about it on Friday, weren't we, when we was doing the training, because the training package that we're delivering, there is a module, well, there's not a module, sorry, there's a thread running through it about assumptions and judgments. And yeah, absolutely did happen. Unfortunately, it still does.
Because I can imagine, like, again, if I bring kind of my own experiences in there, I think it kind of ties into what you were saying about we sometimes think of the person as the problem, don't we? And I think that narrative ends up coming across in people's notes. Like if you think about what we were saying about sitting in like an NHS-based clinic space, and if that person's struggling to engage, well, they're the problem because there might be other people that engage fine, and that kind of narrative persists, doesn't it? Rather than thinking, actually, yeah, maybe there's something about the environment or the space that's not helping. Let's take a different approach, and as you say, go for a drive, go for a walk.
Yeah, and what I was saying is I don't always do the file reviews.
Yeah.
Well, I never do the file reviews initially.
Yeah.
But when I do, it's interesting how many people have had numerous closed referrals because they didn't engage, they couldn't engage, they, you know, all of the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? And I think it sometimes gets missed about thinking, why is it difficult for someone to engage?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I think things are shifting. I think if I think about, those earlier experiences, there wasn't as much understanding about why I might find engaging in those situations difficult. Mm-hmm. But I think, I definitely saw that shift for me in my own care. And I know that's like an approach that you definitely take within your work, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very person-led and we fit around the person.
Yeah.
I guess the other element of how I work differently. Definitely. It is differently. I was thinking, is that the right word? How I work differently now is using the person's experience, being very much led by them.
Yeah.
So the patient's the expert, creating equality within the relationship. I find personally that I find it easy, don't get me wrong, but I find that I have to share some of my own vulnerabilities within that.
Yeah.
Even if it is just a case of, you know, naming it like you're the expert in your care, I'm not the expert, I'll get things wrong. If I do get things wrong, I hope we can discuss that and work through it. Once again, I'll link that to the relationship and how important relationships are. But I guess in essence, it could feel vulnerable for some clinicians.
Yeah.
Especially people that have been around for a long time with some of those traditional models where I guess traditional models, there's a huge power imbalance. And it's shifting that, which, I've found that easy. I've found that really welcoming, and it's how I want to work and probably how I've always wanted to work.
I think it's tricky, isn't it? Because I think it's interesting thinking about kind of your background experience kind of working on wards, and that's an area where power imbalances are a bit more tricky to overcome, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, there's processes and systems and you know, protocols and that we can't shift some of those. The restrictions agenda was a huge shift. There was lots of blanket restrictions. So Joe Bloggs might have done something in 1929, so the whole ward doesn't do it. And that was the way it was.
Yeah.
So once we started thinking about least restrictive practice, that saw a massive shift. Yeah. I think at the time we would respond to presentation in a least restrictive way. I'm not sure at the time we really thought about what the presentation was a part of or what was going on for the person. I think all it meant at the time was we didn't restrict further.
Yeah.
But that's definitely evolving, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the kind of presentation aspect's really interesting because obviously we talk a lot, don't we, about kind of what's underlying that presentation.
Yeah.
And I think if we think back, there wasn't as much thought there, was there, about what might be going on for somebody that meant they were presenting in a particular way or with certain thoughts and feelings or how they kind of acted.
Yeah, there was a real emphasis on like stopping or fixing the behaviour. That was what we did. We aimed to stop it. We aimed to fix it. And yeah, we didn't consider what was going on underneath.
Yeah. Which I guess has kind of shifted, hasn't it? Because I guess if we think about like the training that we deliver together now, and there being that real focus on formulation and kind of seeking to understand what's going on for someone and how that is kind of influencing the way in which they're presenting currently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, formulation's been sort of kicking around for a long time for me. If I think back, it wasn't something that I was overly involved in. I'm not sure it was done with the person all the time. On some occasions, absolutely. Although in those occasions, it would tend to be like the patient and maybe their named psychologist would have sessions, come up with a formulation. We'd have the odd formulation sort of case presentation session on the wards, and that would be pretty much it. It wasn't general practice that it would go in care plans or we would refer to the formulation when working with the people. Whereas now, well, certainly in the role I'm in now, I would not even think about doing a formulation until I'd included the person.
Yeah.
And it drives everything that we do.
Yeah.
All of my current care plans fit with the person's formulation. And if for any reason the person isn't part of that, it's something that I repeatedly make sure that's the ideal, is that you do it with me.
Yeah.
So they can hold in mind that I guess they have been included, even if they haven't been part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I guess if I think back, because I think a lot of the early experiences I had just weren't taking that kind of formulation-based approach. There wasn't that attempt to kind of understand what was going on for me underneath the way in which I was presenting. So I was there presenting as somebody that was incredibly distressed and no one was kind of seeking to understand why. And obviously kind of more recently, care that I've received and kind of those relationships have led to people taking a more kind of formulation-based approach and really doing that curiosity and seeking to understand what's underlying difficulties that I kind of experience. And I know we were saying kind of in relation to that training that we deliver that you were saying years ago kind of cohorts maybe wouldn't have even heard of formulation, whereas I guess now the group that we're currently teaching, everybody or nearly everybody knows about formulations. They're using formulations in their kind of day-to-day practice. And so that real shift towards understanding what's going on for somebody and kind of how that is influencing the way they're presenting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's happening, isn't it?
Definitely. I think we noticed some sort of gaps in terms of people are discussing formulations, they're taking them to safety huddles, somebody mentioned, didn't they, and using it to inform care plans. I think what we'd noticed as a gap or where we need more of a shift is they weren't necessarily developing them with the person.
Yeah.
And I appreciate, I've worked in systems or services where it can almost be impossible to include the person like to the level like say that I do now. And at the same time, it's something that we do really need to think about because your person's your expert. That's where you're going to get your information from. Because what we think's happening isn't always accurate. We can hypothesize, and we often do that really well and really accurately. And we can sometimes get that wrong. The person's experience can be different to ours or what we think. So yeah, that's what I'd like to really see shift is how do we make sure that we always include the person.
I think that shift generally towards just being more collaborative as kind of professionals and patients, I suppose, is really important. And I think we came back to, didn't we, the comment about us working together as colleagues and kind of delivering trainings together as somebody that has accessed services and someone that's got experience of delivering them, and the value in that, and kind of evening out some of those power imbalances.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah. I was just wondering, like, how it feels for you to be a colleague of people that have been professionals in your care or linked to your care. Is there any kind of like is anything uncomfortable? Because I guess where I'm going with this, and I've just sprung it on you, is I guess it would maybe highlight the lack of equality that you've maybe experienced. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I think it hasn't always been easy. I think I've come across a couple of people that I've maybe had less than positive interactions with in the past. I guess the sorts of people that maybe didn't do that kind of curious listening to my experiences or attempting to understand. And actually, I found that quite difficult. But I think in a lot of ways, it's really empowering to be able to stand next to them as somebody that is now a colleague and has put a lot of work and effort into getting to the point that I'm at, where I feel able to share experiences that I've had, whether that's positive experiences, negative experiences, neutral experiences, and sharing the learning from that with that view to wanting to make services better. And I think for me, like, my real interest in being an expert by experience training facilitator on the training that we deliver was to be able to share some of those experiences that I've had that were maybe less helpful. So discussing things like stigma and judgment and how language can really impact on people, and really utilising those kind of trauma-informed principles about seeking to understand what is going on underneath that, and that isn't a quick process. It takes time. As we've said, it's about relationships. I think it's really empowering for me to be able to do that and to feel comfortable and confident in a place where I can share those things and use it to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I was thinking more on the lines of, I'll use an example, and I hope you're okay with it, and if not, we won't use it. So we were delivering the training on Friday, and on Thursday there was an issue with the rooms, and we found this out via email, and I wasn't available, and one of us needed to make a decision, and I wasn't available, which you didn't know. You'd emailed me, hadn't you?
Yeah.
And it got to like the 11th hour, and the decision needed to be made, which you made, and emailed me to say, I hope you don't mind. And then when we talked about it the next day, you shared that you're still a bit like, oh, am I the one that's in charge?
Yeah.
And it was absolutely not. And at the same time, this is your journey into the role. But I guess what I'm thinking is there's still a way to go, isn't there? Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Because I guess what you're kind of referring to there is that even though there shouldn't be we are equals in delivering that training, I clearly still perceive that there is a slight power differential there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And almost in that example, felt that I needed to check with you about what we were doing, and didn't feel that it was necessarily my place to make a decision on that.
Yeah.
And we had that conversation about it, didn't we, about what that meant and what that meant to me, or kind of that interpretation that I had. And so I think you're right. There probably is a way to go with things. I think it can still feel difficult. I think if I think about my own experiences of receiving care in a system that does perpetuate a power imbalance, it does make it challenging then to come in and try and not experience that.
Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it? Because we can keep saying there's a way to go, and then actually, is it because of your experience and you're now sort of like transitioning into a different role, aren't you?
Yeah. I think it's hard. I think it's hard if you've been on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, I get that's what I meant. Yeah.
Feeling that professionals do have that slight upper hand or sit at a different kind of level of power. I think particularly for people like myself that have experienced trauma and loss of power, I think it's really difficult. I think it feels easy in some ways to fall back into that role where I don't have power or control. So it's not an easy process for me to kind of step into a role where I'm trying to equalize that.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, the misuse of power. I think years ago we didn't think about that at all. Definitely do now. And actually, I think for me it's about wherever I work, where does that come into play? You know, if it's a ward, you know, people have to eat at a certain time. Often doors are locked. You know, all of the things. It feels, I imagine, like a power imbalance before we've even started thinking about care. So for me, I think it's about always being mindful of that.
I think collaboration is kind of, the direction that we're wanting to move towards, isn't it? And I guess I think about my role now in supporting kind of co-production and how that kind of issue around power, because obviously the aim of co-production is wanting kind of service users and carers to work in that equal partnership with staff delivering services, people that make decisions about how we deliver services, commissioners, all of that. And actually that's really difficult to actually achieve that equity, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if we kind of round off by just sharing a little bit of a takeaway, kind of what we want people to take away from this conversation in terms of small changes or things to consider from a trauma-informed perspective. I guess for me, if I think about kind of my own journey and my own experiences, like things I would be suggesting would be around just giving people time, focusing on relationships, trust, I think is really difficult for a lot of people that have experienced trauma. So taking the time or giving people the time to build relationships before you expect someone to share. And I think listening's a big one, listening to the person, not judging, not assuming what you think they're going to say or what that might mean for them. I think are really huge things.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah, for me, it's investing time. So really invest in that time, and that can look really different from person to person, situation to situation, you know, service to service, but absolutely invest time. Hear the person's experience. So what was their experience of the situation? Certainly not what's wrote in the notes. Certainly not what we think the experience might have been. Hear it from them, if possible. There's something for me about taking positive risk, and that could fit with the person that doesn't engage. You know, what might it look like if they don't engage and we still let them go in the kitchen? And don't expect engagement because it's offered, which also fits with the person that doesn't engage. And I guess the big thing for me is humanity. It's really, really straightforward. Be human. I know if I was accessing care services, that's what would help me the most.
It's treating people as people, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think we often miss the basics.
And it should be simple.
It should.